So I bring this back to you. Why are you not seriously looking at this? MTD reports that they have, on good times, let's forget the pandemic, over 18% fare box return. Why? Well, because the state of California changed the rules on capital recovery that makes it appear that they're getting more money than they actually are. It's a bookkeeping trick. So folks, I really think you need to really look at this. South County has watched a continued decline in bus usage. You've watched a continued decline in what they call the last mile. Before the pandemic, 2018, 2019, the downtown shuttle in Santa Barbara lost 18%. And that was when the business was starting to come back and getting better. So please consider this. We're more than happy to sit down and consult with you, but you need to stop spending the taxpayers' money on what needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5 is approval of the consent calendar. Is there any directors would like to pull any items from the consent calendar? Is there any public comment on items on the consent calendar?
Director Williams and Board of Directors, no, there's no public comment for consent items.
Then can I get a motion on the consent calendar?
Director Hartman moves approval.
Is there a second?
Seconded by Urick.
I'm sorry, Director Williams, that includes 5B?
Yes.
All right, yeah, can I actually pull that off for a roll call vote?
Okay. So this is item 5B. This is the reconsider circumstances of COVID-19 state of emergency, whether we can continue to meet virtually or not. So why don't I first get a motion on the balance of the consent calendar? Director Hartman, can you?
So moved.
Second? Okay. First by Hartman, second by Urick. This is a motion on the balance of the consent calendar, that is every item except for B. Please call the roll.
Thank you. Director Hart? Yes. Hartman?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Lavanino?
Aye.
Urick?
Aye.
Julian?
Aye.
Sierra?
Aye.
Osborne?
Aye.
Patino?
Aye.
Perotti?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Rouse?
Aye.
And Chair Williams.
Aye.
Motion passes 13-0.
And is there a motion on item B?
So moved.
And is there a second? That's first by Hart, second by Hartman, first by Hartman, second by Hart. Any discussion, or you just want to have a separate vote? Please call the roll.
Director Hart? Yes. Hartman?
Aye.
Nelson?
No.
Lavanino?
Aye.
Urick?
Aye.
Julian?
Aye.
Sierra?
Aye.
Osborne?
Aye.
Patino?
Aye.
Perotti?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Rouse?
Aye.
And Chair Williams.
Aye.
Motion passes 12-1.
We're on to item 6. Madam Clerk, will you please read item 6 into the record?
Thank you, Director Williams. Item 6 is the Regional Surface Transportation Program Reserve. 6A, receive presentation on SBCAG Board Policy on RSTP Reserve for Santa Barbara Highway 101 project. 6B, approve recommendation from the TTAC on the use of RSTP Reserve.
Mr. Kowchek will do the presentation. Mr. Kowchek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, directors. Hope you and your families are doing well. Today, staff is presenting an item to you on the use of Regional Surface Transportation Program funding. This is funding that comes to SBCAG on an annual basis. The PowerPoint today does not include any new content. It just includes content from the staff report. As far as background, as part of the 2010 Measure A strategic plan approved by the SBCAG board, there was a reserve of RSTP funds set aside for the Highway 101 occupancy vehicle project. RSTP funding is a federal source that comes to SBCAG on an annual basis and provides flexible funding for transportation projects. Per the 2020 Measure A strategic plan that your board approved, there was clarification that RSTP funds through fiscal year 23-24 be authorized for use. So it wouldn't be just reserved in a fund for the Highway 101 corridor, but actually be made available for use for projects in the corridor. A couple benefits there are is that it's helping us deliver on projects, local projects that do not need state funding or to have to go through the state process. And it also reduced our need for a Measure A bond, it reduced the Measure A bonding needs, which allowed for additional funding to go to our local partners for the Measure A program. So this estimate at that time was $42 million, and it was authorized for use. So for recently, we did have discussions with TTAC as we are now approaching another cycle of Senate Bill 1 applications for the Highway 101 project. Today, we're seeking use for further clarification on the use of RSTP through 23-24. We do have updated figures, so the $42 million has increased. And then we're also seeking to have further authorization of use of funds through 26-27. As I mentioned, there are some benefits. This will reduce our Senate Bill 1 Cycle 3 request, which we'll be submitting later this year with Caltrans. The benefit of RSTP is that regional surface transportation funds actually count as an eligible match for Senate Bill 1 programs for congested corridors and for freight. And then again, this minimizes our Measure A cash flow needs for the program, and it benefits local agencies with a pass-through funding. Within the staff report, there is information on what the figures look like, which are up on the screen. So the $42 million, we've actually realized $48.4 million, or a $6.4 million increase in funding. The RSTP amounts through 24-25 to 26-27, we'll have a better idea, but an estimate for you is about $4 million per year times 3 years, or $12 million. We did want to note that under the new federal bill that the funding could increase, as we're noticing that there could be increases for RSTP funding. So when you add the $6.4 million through 23-24 plus the 12, you're at about $18.4 million through 26-27. So we are presenting the board with options today. The one option is to clarify the amount available through 23-24 and then to authorize use through 26-27. Or the board can continue to keep the RSTP in a reserve through 26-27 until the 101 HOV project is complete. As I mentioned, we did work with TTAC as a partner on this process with our transparency and accountability. Their recommendation to your board, along with staff's recommendation, is to clarify the amount available through 23-24. And to authorize the use through 26-27. As I mentioned, this will help us with our Senate Bill Cycle 3 applications later this year and also impacts the Measure A program. With that, that concludes staff's recommendation, and I can take any questions at this time.
Is there any questions from Mr. Sarkis? Mr. Kachik? I think I understand the strategy here. And I support it. Can I get a motion on staff recommendation? Is there, first of all, is there public comment?
Chair Williams, there's no public comment.
Can I get a motion?
Chair Williams, I move to go for option A to authorize the use of RSTP funding through fiscal year 26-27 for corridor improvements similar to prior board action.
And is there a second?
Hartman seconds.
Okay. First by Sierra, second by Hartman. Roll call, please.
Director Hart,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Levanino,
Aye.
Eurig,
Aye.
Julian,
Aye.
Sierra,
Aye.
Osborne,
Aye.
Patino,
Aye.
Harody,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Rouse,
Aye.
and Chair Williams.
Aye.
Motion passes 13-0.
Okay. Now we are to the main event. Item 7. We'll read item 7 into the record.
Thank you, Director
And
Williams.
I will close public comment for additionals. I don't believe in people straggling in at the last minute, so.
Okay. I think you need to open it first, but you don't
Okay.
want any more public comment after this point for item
Yeah,
7?
if you got one more minute if you decided to wait till the last minute.
Okay, we do have 6 people that are attending the Zoom, and then there's 2 gentlemen here, or 3
Correct.
gentlemen here as well.
Correct.
So it's a total of 8 at this point. Okay, so item 7 is the Highway 101 Reserve Funding Rincon Trail. 7A, receive an update on Rincon Trail project and options for funding cost increases. 7B, provide direction on various options for funding pre-construction and construction cost increases.
Great. And then, so now I'll close public comment. We will still take all 8 or however many speakers, but again, I don't, just FYI, this won't be just on this item. This will be every meeting. I don't think people should straggle in at last minute. Okay. Presentation.
Yes, good morning, Director Williams and Chair and members of the SBCAG Board, Directors. Fred Luna of SBCAG staff, Director of Project Delivery and Construction. So today's item on the Rincon Trail is a continuation of an item staff presented in December, and we received quite a bit of input and dialogue. We indicated at the time that there were some follow-up items. The staff report has been updated. There were some annotations in there as to some of the options we presented last month. And we also attached the staff report from the previous month for a lot of the background, which I won't repeat today, but I will just generally go over that. But happy to answer any questions on the project as we move forward. Today's presentation, so I'll provide a brief background and history recap. We'll talk a little bit about what transpired at the December 16th SBCAG board meeting. The developments in January included several meetings with the city, most recently this week, and I apologize for the lateness on the presentation, but we were re-summarizing some of the information from the City of Carpinteria Planning Commission meeting that transpired on Tuesday night. Public schedule and risks, I want to review that again for the board's information, and then the consideration of funding options, which we dug into last month, and then any questions and recommendations. So overview of the project, this slide, it provides an aerial depiction of the alignment in yellow. The magenta line shows the division between the city and City of Carpinteria and the Santa Barbara County. So approximately 1/3 of the trail is in the City of Carpinteria, and 2/3 is within the County of Santa Barbara's jurisdiction. The trail's purpose is it fulfills a gap closure in the California Coastal Trail. It's intended to be a multi-use trail, not just a bike trail, so it's to enhance access to the coast. It will connect into County Rincon Park. The lead for the project is the City of Carpinteria. They took action on Monday night on their environmental document. I will get into that in just a second as to the results of that. The project is funded through a variety of sources, including Measure A, PED and Bike project program funds, RSTP funds that you heard earlier about, and then most recently, the design and right-of-way is funded through Active Transportation Program grant, and there's about $6 million in construction for from the Active Transportation Program. So this timeline was included in last month's. In general, I just highlight the city's undertaken several environmental efforts throughout the years. In late 2020, they identified an increase, a significant increase in the project cost. At that time, it was about $15 million. We have $6 million programmed. So what you'll be hearing today is options on how to fund that gap. In the spring of 2021, SBCAG asked that the city come to our subregional committee and present some options as to how we move forward and address those cost increases. We had a series of meetings through the middle and late last year at subregional committees, starting in June with the South Coast Subregional Committee, where we first looked at the status of the project, design options. There was some direction given to the city and their consultant team at that time to look at making some changes, which were done, and the results did decrease the overall cost of the project and also reduce some of the environmental impacts, which were then included in the city's updated environmental impact report. That was the basis of the city's action this week. In December, we summarized these findings to both the South Coast and the North County committees in advance of the SBCAG board meeting in December, when the options were presented and discussed. At the December board meeting, as many of you recall, we gave an overview of the project and the status. Staff presented 4 options on the funding needs. And at that time, as is recorded in the minutes that were approved by the board earlier in this meeting, one of the options was presented, it failed via a vote. That was to fully fund the project. Option B was to phase the project, or basically split the project, and that failed to get a second. And then the board approved an item just to divert the action to today, pending more information, including the results from the city's meeting and additional conversations that I'll discuss a little bit about we've had with ATP program managers and the process going forward on some of the funding options. So this describes staff's involvement on work this month since the December board meeting. We met with CTC staff, that's the California Transportation Commission. They are the administrators of the Active Transportation Program. SBCAG is the recipient of those funds. Just to confirm the deadlines for that project. In December, if you recall, and I have a slide that goes over the schedule, we indicated that the hard deadline for requesting an allocation of those funds is August of this year. So basically we have 7 months to submit an allocation request, and there's still a lot of work to get done on the project. On January 13th, the team met, that includes the city, the county, their consultant team, and SBCAG, and we discussed preparing for the City Planning Commission and reviewing progress on the deliverables. On the 18th, the City of Carpenter Planning Commission certified the ARR and approved the coastal development permit and the conditional use permit for the project. And then on January 20th, today, we're having this discussion on the options. Summarizing the actions from the City of Santa Barbara Planning Commission, as I attended that, the city certified the project EAR and the CDP CUP by a 3-to-1 vote. They approved alternative 3 of the EIR, which is the coastal path that's connecting to County Rincon Park, as the preferred alternative. They received public testimony during the hearing and provided partners and local schools and bike advocates that presented support for the project. The Soaring community expressed opposition to the city's preferred alternative at the hearing. They outlined the process for appeals at the city level. The city indicated in their report that they want to exhaust all the local levels of appeals. So any appeals on the Planning Commission decision would go to the City Council. There's a 10-day period for that. Then the city would file a notice of determination on the CEQA, and then there's a 30-day period for file a legal challenge if that occurs. Staff identified subsequent approvals at the time required by the County of Santa Barbara and the potential for an appeal to the Coastal Commission on the permitting action. I think it's important to know is that the city has, in their updated environmental impact report, addressed comments that were both issued at the notice of preparation and in the draft EIR to modify and reduce impacts. So the preferred alternative, reduce the earthwork, reduce landform alterations, the cost savings of the project that we presented last year to the South Coast Subregional, and again reiterated at the board meeting in December, was approximately $1.8 million. They did respond to the community that submitted comments regarding needing to perform a wind technical study and how it would affect the soaring community. So the city did a technical study and included those findings in the EIR, and they found that no impact under CEQA resulted from the changes that were being made. The city had their contract traffic engineer also review the end treatment into County Rincon Park, as that was a result of some comments as well as to the safety and the intermix of bike traffic with pedestrians entering into a parking lot. And the city staff noted, and the Planning Commission concurred, that alternative 4, which has been supported by many, and you've seen comment letters to that effect, was not necessarily conducive for pedestrians, as this is a multi-use path. That's how it was characterized in our original grant application, and that was primarily focused on bike traffic. So here's a picture of the alternative of the bike path. This primarily shows the area that crosses the Union Pacific Railway and then continues on down to County Rincon Park. And so in response to comments that were received and that I just explained, the city modified that portion that's shown in the orange hatch, and then they created this blue portion in redesign, and that was presented in the EIR that went to the Planning Commission that reduced the overall grading, and that blue portion landed on an old historic railroad bench, but it ends up in the same place. So it did reduce the overall quantities of earthwork by about 11%. So on this slide, you saw something similar last month. I just wanted to indicate where we are and where we need to go on this project. So we're here in January 22. I mentioned earlier that we have a hard deadline of the end of August to submit funding allocation requests to the California Transportation Commission, but there's still a number of issues that need to happen to make that occur successfully. Most specifically at the bottom, now that the city certified their EIR, there still remains the action of getting a coastal permit with the County of Santa Barbara, as this is a dual jurisdiction project. That process commenced in 2021 with some design board reviews, but it still needs to go to final approvals and then to planning commissions on that. The city also is, you can just see there over 3 months, they've indicated, and I mentioned earlier in this presentation, the potential for an appeals process, both under CEQA and coastal permitting. So these are the tasks that are remaining to complete in the next 7 months. The environmental, so there has been a successful outcome, at least at the city's end, but we still have to see how that resolves itself on appeal. The design is moving along, so the design is about 95%, so there should be no issue with completing the design on the project unless something comes out of additional changes that result. Right-of-way, as I mentioned last month, is still in question, as temporary easements are still required from the railroad and some property owners. And then the coastal permitting process, the city did approve their component, but the county needs to do theirs. The railroad bridge over the Union Pacific tracks requires that we enter, or the city enter into a construction and maintenance agreement with UP. The design has been approved, but now they have to start the discussions about the construction and maintenance. And one of the precursors of that is getting the city and county to agree on their share of maintenance for the path. That'll be critical for UP to know who's going to be responsible for maintaining the bridge over their tracks. So last month, we presented 4 options. I've summarized those here again. In the staff report, I did indicate that option A, there could be a hybrid option there, and I'll go through these. Like you heard in the previous report from Mr. Kacek, that we were talking about any additional funds that would be approved by this board would come from the Highway 101 Reserve. So that is primarily comprised of the Regional Surface Transportation Program funds that we talked about. So option A, as described in the staff report, would seek an approval for pre-construction funding that the city's asking for to complete the design and right-of-way in association with the changes that they made last year to modify the design and reduce the costs and the impacts of what is now the approved project by the city. That would be $550,000, and then the construction funding was an additional $12 million. So we have $6 million in ATP. The $12 million would come from RSTP. Option A, as a hybrid, would that the board could approve the pre-construction funding to continue the construction readiness approach, but defer action on the construction funding until June of 2022, when this board would know how the appeals process has played out. There's no deadline for making the commitment of funding other than 2 months prior to the submittal of the CTC approximately, when we would need to enter into an MOU with the city for that construction funding. That still would be, the amount would still be $12 million from the 101 Reserve. Option B, and in all these cases, there's always the option to fund just the pre-construction funding at $550,000. Option B was the phased approach, if you recall, and option B was the deadline for seeking funding from another program, specifically the Active Transportation Program. And so in our January 6th meeting that we had with the California Transportation Commission, they indicated clearly to us that we as an agency couldn't seek additional funding through a cycle that's coming up in June 2022 for cost increases on the project. And so any cost increases need to be borne from local funds. So I spelled that out in the annotations of that option in the staff report. So it really renders this option kind of moot in the sense that it's really no different than option A. And then option C, this was the phased approach that I described. So basically this would be looking at ways to complete a portion of the project to reduce costs, at least in the interim. Ultimately, the commitment would be to build the entire project. In our discussions with the CTC staff, we talked about this. They indicated that the change, as I described last month, is that, and maybe I'll just go back to the slide, is that where this landing here was, the idea was, and as it was presented to the staff, would be to terminate the project in this area and create kind of a turnaround. So this last remaining segment would not be built, all this earthwork would not be built, and then consideration for what happens to the path going forward would be done at a later time. So that was the idea for phasing. The CTC staff indicated that this would require in their mind, a major scope change, which would be presenting information to their staff, and then it would have to go to the full statewide California Transportation Commission for approval, likely not until May. So that would be several additional months of lost time. And then I think, as it's indicated in the staff report, the major scope changes on projects like this are very rarely approved. bifurcating the project into 2 phases would also lose some of the efficiency of the project, and so we're just estimating that would cost an additional $2 million to split it up in that way. And then option D was presented last month, but there was no interest in this from the board, at least based on my takeaway on no confidence in the project. There was strong support that there is a commitment to move the project forward in some way. I won't necessarily go in this one too much. Mr. Kacha covered this a lot as far as the Highway 101 Reserve and how it's been established. I'll only say is that of the additional funds that the board has now approved, if they were to approve an additional amount for the Rincon project, it does cut into those additional funds that would be able to be used as a match for the Highway 101 applications that will be going in later this year for the remaining segments of Highway 101. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions to staff? I have one. Does the option A hybrid allow us to have more match, or is it the same from that perspective between A and A hybrid?
It's the same in the sense it just defers action on the construction component of the project until more information is known as to whether we can successfully deliver the project, or if it's it doesn't meet its August deadline.
Got it. Any other questions? Let's go to public comment.
Chair Williams, we have 3 public comment speakers here in Santa Barbara. First will be Mr. Otis Gillespie, followed by Mr. George Jimenez, and then John Graynold.
Good morning. Good morning, SBCAG Policy Board.
Each speaker has 3 minutes, just as a reminder, and if you can, get ready towards the end of the previous speaker.
I
Mr.
had some
Gillespie.
comments about the city's presentation that they wanted to obtain funding for a partial portion of this proposed multi-use trail, in that initially it was supposed to be the city's 800 to 850 foot section that was in the city limits. Now it goes out to across the Union Pacific Railroad Bridge over to the proposed bench area. So that funding issue, I don't know if there's enough money to do that. The $550K that the city asked for in the December meeting, I thought included a request to complete the environmental impact report, which was approved by the city on Tuesday, but they asked for money to complete the environmental impact report in December. $550K, a portion of that was supposed to go to completing the environmental impact report. This is promoted to be a complete trail, not a fragment of a trail. The access to funding will complicate further efforts to redesign and relocate the multi-use trail. I am not opposed to the multi-use trail. It is the proposed location that will have a substantial impact on the environment and will be destined to fail. 3 earthquake faults, an active landslide area on a reconfigured landmass is a recipe for disaster for the project. The proposed eventual users, the beachgoers, the surfers, and the primary users of the existing Little Diamond Head Bluff, the paragliding and hang gliding community. The location does not have environmental superiority. The Highway 101 Reserve funding is designed for a direct transportation route. As taxpayers, we should expect that to be the case in this project, not a partial construction effort over a short period of time will become a skateboard park, if not completed in its entirety. As board members, you would not expect a building contractor to build less than 1/3 of a proposed project. The Union Pacific Railroad easement and the California Department of Transportation easements were abandoned long ago. The rail line and the highway were moved further north to have a more reliable and sustainable location. The effort to build the proposed MUT in this location, is that my time? Sorry. Oh, 20 more seconds. The proponents claim that Little Diamond Head is an unstable landmass that is in an active landslide area between 3 earthquake faults to be replaced with a reconfigured landmass in an active landslide area between 3 earthquake faults near the Pacific Ocean and build where transportation easements have already been abandoned by the current owners. What could go wrong?
Thank you, Mr. Glassby.
Next will be Mr. George Jimenez.
If public speakers that are next can be ready, please.
I am
Please
ready.
proceed.
Hello, Santa Barbara CAG board members. My name is George Jimenez. I oppose the Rincon Trail project as it is proposed. This current project design destroys the natural habitat for a variety of plants, insects, and the animals that use these bluffs. It reshapes the entire hillside. The city of Carpinteria and the city's planners were not even considering the need to do an environmental impact report until they realized they were facing opposition from the soaring community. We had to file an appeal to get the city to conduct an EIR. The soaring community was never consulted in writing of the EIR. This project is projected to cost over $16 million. It will remove thousands of truckloads of dirt away from the bluffs. The traffic of thousands of truck trips would be polluting, devastating, and create havoc in our natural area. This trail would destroy an existing recreational activity that has been going on this location for 40+ years. Paragliders, hang gliders should not lose out over another recreational activity. Please do not approve this project. The EIR is flawed and has misinformation regarding the loss of wind lift. No one consulted the paragliders or hang gliders when this project was proposed. It was only when soaring community raised an uproar and filed an appeal that the EIR was conducted. This project also violates CEQA in its lack of consideration for the environmental impact upon the winds which circulate at Bates Bluff. I don't believe the city of Carpinteria's studies contained that EIR are factual and conclusive. The city of Carpinteria is utilizing, California State Active Transportation funding to construct this project. This is not a transportation project. It's a visitor-serving tourism attraction. These funds are being misused. This is a development project for the city of Carpinteria and should be funded by the developers of proposed hotels on the bluffs. This is a misappropriation of government funds. Caltrans, as part of the freeway widening project, was supposed to build and provide a bike path continuation to the Ventura bike path. The path should be along the north side of the freeway, providing transportation corridor for those who are not in cars. The city is trying to use these funds to build their so-called multi-use trail. The city of Carpinteria took it upon themselves to reroute the original plans. I oppose this plan and would be in favor of a better, sensible bike path. I would like to see the city of Carpinteria revisit Alternative 4 in the fact. The city of Carpinteria's own environmental review committee recommended Alternative 4. I support Alternative 4 and believe the city should go forward with their own environment review committee recommendations.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not quite done, but
You have 3 minutes.
thank you.
Good morning, board members and chair. Thanks for the opportunity to address this important item today. I take it that you folks didn't have the opportunity to sweat through the 3.5-hour meeting that occurred night before last with the Carpinteria Planning Commission. As you saw on the presentation, they did approve it. And you can see that the EIR was certified based on CEQA laws. Now, what happened was really revealing for me. If you were at the meeting, you would have found out why you can get away with a Class 1 impact if it's not within the CEQA guidelines. In other words, if you as a biologist come across an endangered species that's going to be taken out by a project, and then you go and consult the guidelines and it's not actually listed, well, then there's no impact. And that's what's happened to us. If that hill was completely removed, and so there's no doubt about the fact that it would destroy the ability to soar, no one is legally bound to respond as an impact because of CEQA guidelines. So that's what's happened to us, and that's how the city of Carpinteria finally answered my question of how they could get away with a Class 1 impact. So I guess what we're going to have to do at this point, and I can speak for our association, is we're consulting with our environmental lawyers to find out if within the CEQA guidelines there's at least a spirit of the law that we can say, hey, you're violating, as opposed to, apparently according to the legal advice and the EIR authors for this project have said, oh, no, there's no letter of the law that says we may have to do any wind study for you. So I went to that meeting to say, hey, if you guys got any questions about this wind study, go ahead and ask them, because I was part author of that. So why they even do the wind study? That's at this point, what we're looking at. We're basically not on the list. So we're asking from this board some protection that where your judgment and your skill as decision makers actually makes a difference, even though CEQA doesn't have us listed. So we're going to appeal this project. And, again, if you were at that meeting or even just looked at the transcripts, you would see that some of the arguments for not doing the less destructive alternative had to do with access for pedestrians to the park. Clearly, an extension of a tourism-based attempt by the city of Carpinteria. Now, people talk about free money. It's gas tax, it's county, it's fed. Well, I'm paying a crap load of money into this tax base annually, and I don't want it to go to Carpinteria's tourism efforts when you can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Please consider that there's lots of alternatives for bike paths. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask the next public speakers to keep to their 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Williams. We actually have people requesting to speak via Zoom. And I just wanted, for the record, let everyone know we received 24 public comment letters via email that were already forwarded to the board and posted to our website as well. So the first speaker I'm going to go with, I'm just going to go in order. There's appearing on my screen, is Carl. And Carl, can you please state your first and last name for the record? I'm going to allow him to talk. Carl, you can speak now.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Carl Cameron from Carpinteria. Yeah, I went to the meeting the other night at Santa Barbara, at the Carpinteria City Council hall, and it became evident pretty much where the project has been coming from. It was pre-decided, really. It was quite evident from the testimony that was going on. It became clear how, no interest really in the transportation piece, as the Ventura bike group has spoken out and said, hey, we really want to see it connected to our multi-million-dollar trail that we put in. What was raised, which I thought was a great idea, was to put a T in and go through the hill where it's only 15 feet high across from where the bathroom is. Be a great alternative. It wouldn't ruin the flying for the pilots. Be able to allow pedestrians to, get right there where the bathrooms are and go down to the beach, and the bike riders could continue onto the path. Minimal amount of dirt movement, as the trail would be very similar to what happened in Summerlin in the way that they built the path there. They're talking about 500 feet of retaining wall, but the retaining wall isn't that big in Summerlin. We've asked for figures and amounts from the city, and they've steadfast refused to give us any real information on the option 3. So they've just been pushing for option 4 the whole time. Or I'm sorry, option 3, where, being on the north side of the bluffs, we think is a better bike path. It just would really like some real representation on this. Matt Roberts is already pushing through the hotel project in the city. 1,000 signatures had to put it on the ballot, so it's going to get voted on in November. I mean, that seems to be the only way that we're really getting real representation on this thing. We've already raised 2,800 signatures on a petition for the other alternative. There's going to be a big groundswell that we're going to push for. It just makes sense to try and make something that works for everyone instead of pushing something through that's of an opinion that that's the way it should go. And that really isn't the general public's feeling. I appreciate some real consideration to all of these factors. We had sent an analysis from Dennis Pagan, whose mathematical calculations had been misused in the study, and kind of pointed out how there'll be an 80% impact on flying at the bluffs there. There's just a lot of pieces that aren't being addressed. And on top of the fact that there's an uncapped oil well in the trail, and the state has written back and said that's a significant impact. And, that specifically wasn't even addressed. So there's just all these pieces, avoiding all of the utilities on the trail, all of that cost would be saved if you go on the other side. So I appreciate you listening to us, and I hope you take this to heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Ian Higgins.
Hello, board members. You hear me?
Yes,
We can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time and consideration. I would like you to reject this project as proposed. I have major concerns with the safety of the proposed path, funneling cyclists, pedestrians, e-bikes, other trail users into an already congested parking lot. I don't know if you guys have spent summer days in the Western Rincon parking lot, but it can be completely packed. And to expect a safe travel corridor through there for cyclists and anyone else commuting from Santa Barbara to Ventura, it proposes all sorts of issues. I attended the city meeting IE attended the city meeting on January 18th, and I didn't hear any support from the cycling community. In fact, the public opinion was to construct the path as I believe we all want to be constructed, but with an alternative to avoid funneling the increased congestion into the parking lot. The County of Ventura obviously identified the dangers of using the existing lower Rincon lot when constructing their existing path that parallels the southern lot, as proposed by alternative number 4, to parallel the upper or the western lot. The cost of possible loss in life and property significantly outweighs any benefit that I can see. The path should flow to the existing Ventura bike path as the funding for the project requires, and to be a source of transportation. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Next public speaker, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name, is AJ Rajamani. Okay, maybe they don't want to speak. Let's go to Eric with no last name. So if you can let me know what your last name is, I appreciate it. Eric, do you want to speak? Okay, we'll move on to the next speaker, which is James Zender.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much for letting me speak. I echo some of the sentiments of the public comments that have been stated thus far. I really want to encourage reconsidering funding this project the way it currently stands. Although I'm not opposed to having a multi-use trail, this seems to be that the majority of people were looking for the first three alternatives to be in the front of the bluff. And alternative 4 on the gives rise to putting on the north side of the bluff, benefits both the flying community, the cycling community, and I think what really needs to be considered that Mr. Higgins mentioned prior is the safety issue. It seems that the city of Carpinteria is more interested on the view of that several hundred feet on the front side of the bluff, as like a tourist type of situation. But I believe, and I want you to consider that the view is definitely not as important as the safety of cyclists and pedestrians. The majority of people that will be using this multi-use trail will be cyclists, riding from the north to the south and vice versa. Having this trail and alternative 4 on the backside of the hill will eliminate dumping thousands of cyclists into that ridiculously busy parking lot. I surf. I am also a pilot and cyclist. And I see that funding a project that empties thousands of people into that parking lot is an incredible safety hazard. And I really would like the board to look closer at that, because an alternative 4 would completely negate that aspect of the safety hazard, but still get the original intentions done of getting cyclists from Carpinteria down south to that already nice bike path stemming along the coast from the lower yard. That view of several hundred feet, in my opinion, and I know that many, many, many thousands of people share the same opinion, is not worth the hazard and also destruction of a soaring site that has been going on for over 40 years. And that's what I wanted to say, and I really thank you for allowing me to speak.
Chair Williams, we have no further requests for public comment.
We'll give one more shot for questions to staff. If anything has come up. Mr. Nelson, Director Nelson.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand correctly. This project is a required project through part of the 101 widening. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, Director Nelson, through the chair, that is correct. I failed to mention that was part of the background in the staff report, that as part of the local coastal program amendment that Caltrans has with the city of Carpinteria and the coastal development permits, that this project is a requirement to implement.
So help me with, so if we don't move forward with it and we continue and we widen the 101, you know, where does that enforcement that we have to complete this project take place? I mean, what's the hook on this segment? Okay.
Well, that's probably a question that would best be answered by the city, in the sense that, you know, a lot of these projects, when they're conditioned as part of the larger 101 project, there's language in there as feasible, or if it can be developed, you know, in such that there were conditions related to this particular project that it needed to be finished no later than the Linda Casitas project. Well, we're well beyond that project deadline, and so, you know, we continue to move the project forward until it cannot move forward any further. And so it did receive a significant favorable outcome on Tuesday, but there's still a lot of work left to get done.
And just to confirm that the grants that we have received at this point through this process, we're going to lose those, right? I mean, that's what I'm understanding if I'm reading between the lines here.
So we have $6 million in active transportation program that needs to be allocated by August. There's quite a bit of work that needs to get done. Those of you familiar with the coastal permitting process at the county, that has really not initiated yet, so there's quite a bit of work still left. So yeah, it's in jeopardy.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hart?
Yeah, I think this is a tough spot we're in, And this project has taken a long time to evolve. Folks have been working on it hard for many years. It's a regionally significant project. It's really linchpin in terms of coastal access along the segment of the coast connecting the very modern bike path along the Rincon, into Santa Barbara County. The California Transportation Commission thought so highly of it. They granted us the $6 million. It's always been part of our applications for the future funding for the 101 widening. So to me, it is part of that. It obviously has its own separate funding stream, and that is in jeopardy by the delays and the complications with this project. But in the context of what we're trying to accomplish with the entire project, this is still a relatively small amount of money in that context. And I don't really see us having any choice at this moment in time. The hybrid option A that gets the pre-construction money going, keeps the project moving as fast as it can, and defers our ultimate allocation of the $12 million necessary to keep the construction on track. Preserves options for us in the future. I think we're going to find ourselves in the same place in the future. We're going to need to have the commitment from the SBCAG board to go forward. And I think that helps us ultimately with the application to the CTC for the widening of the full project, because it shows that we're doing everything we can to maintain our commitment to that project. And ultimately, they're going to be the decision maker about the big grant application that we're going to have, or maybe multiple grant applications. We've had them down here. They understand this project in the context of how important it is. They want to be supportive. There's extra money that's coming to the state of California from the federal government through the Biden administration's initiatives. And there are options, but this is not the greatest day. It's just a tough reality. And I believe personally, having looked at the environmental document and the wind study, that there's a way to accommodate the soaring community and to have this bike path. I don't think they are incompatible. It's different opinions, I'm sure, and I understand the concerns of the soaring community, but this is a regionally significant transportation facility. It's not a tourism thing. It's the California Coastal Trail, and you got to get from one place to the other to be on the California Coastal Trail, and this is where the trail needs to go. So I'm supportive of option A, the hybrid alternative that staff has described.
Director Sierra.
Thank you, Chair Williams. I had two questions. The first one is, if we have a $6 million active transportation grant, does that cut the 12 million down to 6, or is that a $6 million grant plus 12 million? It is 18 million then. Okay, thank you. That clarifies that. The second question is, I know that the study has been done to put the bike trail on the north side of the highway, and I'm wondering, I'm sure it was answered before, I'm just not remembering well today. What was the reason to move it to the ocean side?
Director Sierra, through the chair. The goal of the project was always to be on the coast. And so this was the original purpose of the project, this alignment or something along the coast to use this bench and connecting to County Rincon Park. Back to the grant application that was submitted in 2016, there were previous studies that looked at alignments along the freeway or even using the freeway and in the city's EIR, but not shown directly in my presentation today, was 4 different alternatives. I think alternative 4 looks at an option that goes over the bridge and then cuts across and then goes down all the way down to Bates Road. So as you heard in public testimony today, that that alternative, as described in the EIR by the city's consultants, would require even additional earthwork. It doesn't impact that coastal area, but it doesn't go to the coast. And it requires a very lengthy retaining wall because of the grades in that area. So it wasn't the city's environmentally preferred alternative.
Thank you.
Other comments by directors or questions?
Chair Williams, Director Patino would like to speak.
Director Patino?
Yes, I'm not really willing to commit any more money to this project. I think it's a high risk. I can appreciate, I think it's, I like it. I'm not a bicyclist, but I like it, and I know other people would really enjoy this. But I assume by the comments and the letters that we've received, there's going to be legal challenges. So we're going to commit this money, and then it's not going to be able to to meet the August deadline. And I just think it's irresponsible for us right now because our first priority is the Highway 101 project, and I don't want money taken out of that reserve right now. We're expecting Margie to help move us forward. This is a project that has been ongoing. Oh gosh, we've been waiting for this for probably over 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. And I just think that should be our first priority right now. And so I really don't want to see any of that money coming out of our Highway 101 reserves. Thank you.
Other directors? Then I'll make a comment. I think that it's tough to deal with cost overruns, but this, in terms of our commitments, this legally is the Highway 101 project. This is part of what we committed to doing as part of the Highway 101 project. And so I think it's important for our long-term ability to do projects that cobble together the interests of counties and cities to perform on those. And I might have an opinion about what the perfect design is, but the fact is that we're the funding agency, and we say yes or no to a design that one of our member agencies puts forward. So we're not approving this design. We're not approving another design. We are deciding whether to fund the city of Carpinteria's decision on their design. And from my perspective, that is an easier choice to make, that we are supporting something that we have already committed to doing. And if the city of Carpinteria fails to do that, then we get the 12 million bucks back. Let's at least give them a shot to perform to the grant so that they get the 6 million for the project. And if they don't manage to do it, then we will allocate it to other needs on the corridor. Is there a motion? Oh, and just one other moment. I'm disappointed that public speakers have dismissed the idea that there might be another reason why it's desired to be on the coast besides for tourism. I mean, the input that I get from Carpinteria residents is the desirability of using a trail network that begins at the state park and continues all the way along the coast. That doesn't mean that there aren't other consequences, and I understand that there's a duel of opinions and expertise between the soaring community and the city as to whether this will impact the winds or not. And I totally get why they're opposed, but I don't think that it should go into dismissing the idea that residents might rather look at the ocean when they're going than look at the freeway when they're going. Is there a motion?
Director Williams, excuse me, Director Clark would like to speak.
Director Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move option A with the hybrid aspect.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion by Clark and second by Hart.
Director Williams, excuse me, Director Patina had her hand up after Director Clark, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's okay. We're in discussion. How much money is it going to be committed that is not retrievable?
550,000 under option A hybrid.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Director Hart,
Aye.
I'm sorry, did you want to say something? Oh.
No.
Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Levanino,
Aye.
Eurig,
Aye.
Julian,
Aye.
Sierra,
Aye.
Osborne,
Aye.
Patino,
No.
Perotti,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Rouse,
Aye.
and Chair Williams.
Aye.
Motion passes 12-1.
Thank you. We'll go to item 8. Please read that into the record. Well, I could do it.
I got
Regional
it.
Early Action Planning Grants.
I got it right here. Thank you. Item 8, Regional Early Action Planning Grants. Receive a presentation on the Regional Early Action Planning Grants Program.
Mr. Becker?
Yes, thank you, Chair Williams and directors. Mike Becker, Director of Planning. So hopefully this is a no controversy item. So here to talk about the Regional Early Action Planning Grants Program, the second iteration of that. And this is a brief information-only presentation. You'll learn more in the coming months. So the REAP program, this is the second iteration. About 18 months ago, we had the first REAP 1.0, or just REAP at the time, and that focused on housing. So SBCAG working with, through AMBAG, the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, and the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments, received funding for housing. And we used a formula to allocate it to each of our member agencies, and most used it for either updating their housing element or doing work on accessory dwelling unit ordinances. So with the REAP 2.0, there's a couple of differences. For one, it's a lot more money, $600 million statewide, and the formula share coming to the Santa Barbara County region is about $5.8 million. The purpose of it is to implement the region's sustainable community strategy, which is a requirement of, the sustainable community strategy is a requirement of a 2008 law, SB 375. However, there's never been any money tied to actually implementing it until this program. There's an additional pot of money that's competitive statewide for transformative projects. And there are some limitations with this money. All money must be obligated by June 2024, and it must be spent by June 2026 with no exceptions. So I talked about implementing the region's sustainable community strategy, so I figured I should probably tell you what that means. So we've developed 3 sustainable community strategies since the passage of SB 375, and they're all largely the same. SB 375 requires us or challenges us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from light-duty vehicles, and that is largely undertaken by reducing vehicle miles traveled, or VMT for short. Our sustainable community strategy does it a couple ways. Number one, largely by looking to close the gap between where people live and where they work. That's the jobs housing balance or imbalance. The second part is to develop in a way that not every trip has to happen by a car. And that's when we do close that jobs housing or address the jobs housing balance, also to develop in a way that we're developing in areas that have efficient transportation options. And the third aspect is the multimodal communities, and that's building out a bicycle, pedestrian, and transit network to ensure that people have options in the way that they get around. So essentially, to be eligible for this program, the projects will have to show that through either a housing aspect or a transportation aspect, that they're reducing vehicle miles traveled, or that their projects have the potential to reduce vehicle miles traveled. So a couple more details on the program. Despite this was approved last June, there was a bureaucracy at the state level with HCD, the Housing Community Development, Caltrans, the Strategic Growth Council, and the Air Resources Board are all coordinating on developing guidelines. In early December, they released the framework paper, which essentially is the draft guidelines. So that's what enabled us to figure a little bit more out and start engaging with our advisory committees. And we do expect the final guidelines to come out in February. We do know that we're going to have a public process. So we've been working internally to start to have a feel what that might look like. But that would be what are the mix of projects that are planning related compared to capital or actually delivering a physical project. And also the public process will help us determine what performance metrics that we'll develop and apply to assess projects. So we'll be conducting a public process to get some input on the split between planning and capital projects, and also on the performance metrics we use. And after we go through a regional call of projects and score those, we'll submit our recommendations to the state's Department of Housing and Community Development, and ultimately they'll say yes or no. So REAP was designed to be as accommodating as possible in terms of what projects fit within it. So I thought it would be more appropriate to start with what's not eligible. And that's if you can't show that your project has a potential to reduce the vehicle miles traveled or has a housing nexus, it's not going to be eligible. And the second part is if you are required to do it, then it's not eligible. And the example that I've used with this is the state's Air Resources Board already requires a transition of transit vehicles to electric vehicles. So therefore, that's a requirement. Therefore, it would not be eligible to purchase electric buses with this program. So there's 4 broad categories of eligible projects. Accelerating infill development, a wide range of projects can fit into that. The planning studies, specific plans, doing some environmental pre-clearance on housing projects and so forth. And also I would say that as we work through this program, we are going to include, in addition to the usual suspects that currently work with us, the planning and public works aspects, but we'll also include the Region's 2 housing authorities because they will be eligible. The second is the multimodal communities, so building projects or developing plans related to bicycle pedestrian transit. Shifting travel behavior, this includes things like a road pricing study or a Vmt Mitigation Bank on a regional level. And then the last is increasing transit ridership. However, the framework paper does specify that increasing transit ridership is more in terms of connecting transit to where people live in terms of the physical infrastructure or promoting more housing production around transit assets. So just going through, and I will qualify that these were my thoughts just based on the projects that we have out there. So potentially if SBCAG were to apply for some funds through the program, we can develop a web interface to track our sustainable community strategies implementation. I've also mentioned the VMT Mitigation Bank. This is an opportunity to get it off the ground. However, this would require interest from the jurisdictions and willingness to participate in the use of a regional mitigation bank. And then also, we've had some discussions regarding specific plans, which I think in terms on the planning side, that's the best way to leverage this funding, where you can potentially spend $1 million on a specific plan that results in $500 million of private development capital. And then also just thinking of some projects that come out of our planning processes that currently don't have any funding is the 2 examples are here in Buellton. One is to do the planning and engineering and potentially environmental work related to road diet of Highway 246 on the west side of Buellton. And the other is one segment of the overall San Ynez Valley Trail. And the segment that I think that would fit into this pot of funding is entirely within the city of Buellton between Riverview Park and Avenue of Flags. There's some work already going on the other segments. And my last slide, so just we don't know all of the details yet. We have a good idea what this program is going to look like, but it's still subject to change until we get the final guidelines. And I just want to say $5.8 million is a lot of money, especially from the planning side. You could do a lot of good planning work. However, $5.8 million, as we just heard in the last item, is not a lot of money for the capital side. However, this program requires us to do both. It's not and or, it's and. You must do planning work and you must deliver a capital project. So that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions, and I'll certainly be back in the coming months with more information on this and highlight where we go as a region.
Is there any questions for Mr. Becker? Is there any, Director Sierra?
Not so much a question, just it's a wonderful opportunity, and I really appreciate Buellton has 2 items on the local agency initial ideas. We could certainly use some help getting both of those projects done, and if REAP can help us do it, then we would be very grateful and happy to participate.
Yeah, thank you, Director Sierra. I think these came out of our planning work, or the river trail's been going on a bit longer, but yeah, in terms of projects that aren't yet funded and are about the right size, these seem to make sense. However, we'll require you nudging your staff to make sure they apply. And
Is there, Director Hartman?
I just had a question. If in future we could get a presentation about regional VMT mitigation banks, how they work and where they've worked, and just more information.
Director Hartman, I can add that to my list of things to do. Yes.
Okay.
And Chair Williams, Director Uhrig.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Question related to what was just said about funding available for the projects in Buellton. And I just wanted to confirm, because I'm not exactly sure what's all for the rest of it coming from the Avenue of the Flags coming into Solvang along the south side of the river now. Is that funding available for that part of the project, or I thought I heard you say the rest of it was not eligible? I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, Director Uhrig, so on the part between Buellton and Solvang, I think it's gone beyond me now, and it's Supervisor Hartman's office and County Parks through the Park Master Plan. However, the reason why I didn't suggest funding that portion with this, because 2 reasons. Number 1, it has some legs that it's moving on its own. And number 2, it would require more funding than what's available through this program. So I was just looking for projects that potentially fit within this program.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, can I get a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second. And there is no public comment on this item. Okay, roll call, please.
Director Hart,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Lavanino.
Aye.
Uhrig,
Aye.
Julian,
Aye.
Sierra,
Aye.
Osborne,
Aye.
Patino,
Aye.
Perotti,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Rouse,
Aye.
and Chair Williams.
Aye.
Motion passes 13-0. Okay, next item is community appointments for 2022. And Director Williams, or Chair Williams, do you want me to go through each individual one we appoint and then at the end make one motion, or do you want to do it a motion for each one, or just?
Let's do it together unless
At the end.
there's a major difference of
Okay.
opinion.
Thank you. So first item is 9A, appoint 1 delegate and 1 alternate to the California Association of Councils, CalCog.
The current appointees are Sierra and Osborne.
I would love to keep that position.
I want to keep Sierra around as long as I can, so I'm going to agree to that.
And I'd like to continue as alternate.
Great.
Osborne.
Okay, any others, or is that agreeable? Okay, number 2 is Losan, which was Mr. Hart and Ms. Murillo.
I'd like to stay. I was elected as chair yesterday.
Yeah, that would be kind of needed. I'd like to do it, but there might be another county seat opened up soon. I'd be happy to get Mr. Rouse on it for now, but I definitely would like to serve on it next year.
I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Chair.
And then the Coast Rail Coordinating Council was myself as alternate and Ms. Murillo as the member. I'd be happy to go to the member, and if you would like to be alternate, Mr. Rouse?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Any other folks? Cal Vance, which is currently Mr. Julian and Ms. Hartman. You two wish to continue?
I wish to continue unless others may want to join in.
Great. Any others? Okay, well, that's agreeable. And Highway 154 Safety Committee, which is currently Hartman, Hart, Parodi, Sierra, and Urig.
I'd like to stay on, Chair Williams, Parodi.
And do all current members wish to stay on? I see a nod from Hart.
Urig would like to stay on.
And Sierra, you wish to continue? Okay.
Yeah, and Chair Williams, if I might add, they all are connected in one way to the 154, so we need everybody from those communities.
Absolutely. That's a good point. And then the executive committee is typically the chair, vice chair, immediate past chair, North County sub-chair, and South County sub-chair. So that would be myself. That would be Ms. Osborne. And that would be Ms. Sierra. And the sub-regional chairs are Mr. Nelson and...
No, Director Hart for South Coast and
Urig
for
Okay.
North County.
So by our normal procedure, that would be Williams, Osborne, Sierra, Urig, and Hart. Any difference of opinion on that? Okay. So could I get a motion for the status quo, except adding Mr. Rouse to LoSAN as the alternate and Mr. Rouse to Coast Rail Coordinating Council as the alternate, and then the new slate for the executive committee.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. There isn't any public comment on
No
this
public
item.
comment.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Director Hart. Hartman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Lavanino.
Aye.
Urig.
Aye.
Julian.
Aye.
Sierra.
Aye.
Osborne.
Aye.
Patino.
Aye.
Parodi.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Rouse.
Aye.
And Chair Williams.
Aye.
Motion passes 13-0.
So item 10 is 1-minute reports, if there's anybody who's burning on them. Okay, good. We'll do item 11, Executive Director's Report.
Real quick, I just want to congratulate Director Hart for his election to Chair of LoSAN. I look forward to the upcoming year. Thank you very much. That's my report.
Caltrans Report, item 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Scott Eads again here today for Caltrans. Just a couple quick things. One is that there is construction ongoing at Los Alamos at the 101-135 overcrossing bridge. We're placing girders today and tomorrow. So we do have Route 135 under the bridge closed. We're trying to provide as much service as we can. There's a shuttle service for passengers to the Los Alamos Ranchos Mobile Home Park as needed, and the ramps are open in the northbound direction with limited access. Please follow up with us if you have any questions on that. And the second thing I wanted to highlight is that February 1st is the deadline for the Clean California Local Grant Program. We've mentioned it several times. Applications or instructions are available online at cleancaliforniadot.ca.gov. You can look under local grants or just type local grant program, Clean California in your Google, and you're good to go. That's all I have for today. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions on the Caltrans report? Questions for Mr. Eads? Then item 13 is committee meetings, Losan board meeting Monday.
Yes, we had a Losan board meeting, and the bulk of the discussion was about the Losan strategic plan. It's been 10 years since Losan did its first strategic plan, and there was a lot of board member engagement, and this is kind of the start of that process, so there'll be more workshops to come.
Great, thank you. Any questions on the committee report? And TTAC has no report. We are going to have a special meeting on February 17th. So we'll have our normal board meeting, hopefully a little more brief than this, and then we'll move to the special meeting. On my understanding, the extra added some incentive, there will be lunch. So be here. It's an important meeting for the long run. With that, we'll adjourn to Thursday, February 17th at 10 a.m.